it's a whole industry about how to get rich writing your screenplay. I can make you the next Steven Spielberg. I can make you Martin Scorsese. It's a lot of showmanship and artificial stuff there, and I wouldn't dismiss them. In fact, I've co-written a book on the screenwriting process in Germany. But really, structure can be reduced to a very basic concept that's important for you to remember. And that is simply this: somebody wants something and has difficulty in getting it. That's what your story has to have. You have to have a main character or a group of characters, it was an ensemble piece, and you have to have a goal for them to try and achieve. Now, it might be to be president of the United States, it might be to take over the world, it might be to rob the bank, it might be to marry the most beautiful woman in the world. There has to be something that you describe in the first act of the story that identifies what their goal is, what they are trying to do. And you must not make it easy for them. What you need to do is create obstacles for your main character or characters in order to achieve their goal or fail. They might fail, which is usually a tragedy. And that creates the narrative tension that keeps the audience attracted to the story and keeps them on the edge of their seats, so they want to know what happens next. If you have a character who doesn't know what they want or has no clear goal, there's no interest for the audience to follow that. That you have to create problems for them, obstacles for them to achieve their goals. Now, we could go into a lot more detail about that. I'm a great believer in mythic structure, where we use the ancient mythologies and the narrative techniques of storytelling from the great religions and from the great mythologies of the past to try and help us understand the way story structure is created. And if you go right back to Aristotle 2,000 years ago, who was writing about Greek tragedy, the stuff he was saying 2,000 years ago about structure and characterization and dialogue is exactly the same as what we apply to screenwriting today. It's about having strong characters. It's about having a story with complications that grabs your attention. And it's about convincing the audience that they want to know what happens next, leading to this word that Aristotle used at the end of the story of catharsis. Catharsis is about the feeling that the story has completed its journey and has turned out in the way that satisfies you. Not necessarily in the way you predicted, because there's another very important element in screenwriting that I would urge you to think about, which is when you have a main character who has this goal, you have to think, so I want to become, my character wants to become president of the United States of America. That's the goal. But in the story, if he just has a few problems and then becomes president of the United States, that's boring, because that's exactly what has been predicted at the beginning. So what you want to do is find a surprise, a twist in the story, which is not what we expected. So he thinks he wants to be President of the United States. But what he discovers is that actually it's more important for him to give up politics and look after his sick mother, because that's more humane and more important than political ambition. And what we talk about in screenwriting is a character's want and a character's need. What does the character want? The character wants to be powerful and important. But what we discover at the end of the film is that the character needs to get in touch with his or her emotions and connect with the people around him, fall in love with the woman he's always loved, look after his mum, whatever. And that's a very important rule for you to understand in writing long form narratives, to ask yourself, what does my character want, but what do they really need? And they should be two different things. If their want and need are the same, you're in trouble. If they want to rob the bank and need to rob the bank, that's boring. But if they want to rob the bank, but they need to understand that actually having money is not so important and they can just live in their tent in the woods, that's a story. And often the want is an external element. It's like an action of wanting to rob the bank or become a politician, whereas the need is an internal thing that's usually connected with the emotions. And if you can find that in your story, you're really on the road to writing a script that people want to see. It is important, though, that you are able to acquire the tools for screenwriting that will help you to make that possible. And there's a quote I'll give you, and it's not from a screenwriter, it's from a painter called Delacroix, the French Impressionist painter. And he said, "First, learn to be a craftsman. It won't stop you from being a genius." You have to learn the tools in order to succeed. So even if you think about Picasso with doing his little squiggles of bulls and stuff, and abstract stuff, Picasso was a brilliant draftsman. I mean, he learned to paint properly before he learned or discovered his abstract way of painting. And as a writer, you need to learn the tools of screenwriting before you can understand the complexity of structure and characterization and dialogue and creating scenes, so that you can make the whole work. And let me give you one other tip. Character dictates plot. It's not the other way round. It has to be the people in your story who make the decisions that drive the narrative. If you just have a story that goes and then, and then, and then, and then, it's not interesting because it's not driven by the character's decisions. It's just a series of events that you're inventing for a story, but it doesn't feel authentic. It doesn't feel real. It has to be from your main character's decision making. They have to have dilemmas. Am I going to shoot this guy or am I going to run away? Am I going to fall in love with that woman or am I going to go back to my first love? And the audience will follow your story if they believe in the characters. So the message there is to know your characters and to know who they are. Think about their backstory. By backstory, I mean what happened to your characters before your film starts. So it's like, where do they come from? How old are they? What did they do? Are they happy? Are they miserable? Are they optimistic, pessimistic? Do they have pets? Do they have kids? The more complicated they are, the more fascinating they are. Because people are complicated. All of us, we are a mixture of positive and negative characteristics. We might be very happy people, but we might be depressed sometimes. Or we might be very extrovert, party people, but not all the time. Sometimes we're very quiet and miserable. People are complicated. So you don't want to present a character in a script that is just handsome and strong and brilliant, or beautiful and sexy and gorgeous. I mean, it's boring. That's a two-dimensional character. And if you think about superhero movies, I'm kind of bored of superhero movies myself, but of course I'm not the target audience for them. Every superhero has to have a fatal flaw. There has to be something wrong with them. Otherwise, there's no challenge for them. So if you think about Superman, Superman can do anything he wants as long as there's no kryptonite, because we know that kryptonite is his weakness, etc., etc. And if they don't have a weakness, there's no obstacle, there's no challenge to them doing whatever they need to do. And in storytelling, you need to create obstacles, you need to create problems for your characters. So these are some sort of kind of general points that I wanted to just present to you briefly to think about in writing your scripts. But I think at this point, I'll go over to the projects and we can have a chat about them. Let me see, who have we got here? Is Excel there? I see Excel's got a screen, but I don't know if he's got his camera on.
Excel.
Oh.
Yeah.
Hi.
Hi.
So Excel, you've written this project called Tears.
Yes.
And I think it's lovely. I think it's a really good idea. Let me just read out the log line to the other people who I guess don't know about it. A newly graduate filmmaker tried his best to make a great documentary for his first job, but the company that he works for has different ideas about what his documentary should look like. Is this based on your own experience or a story you know about?
No, but I get inspired from the television on Indonesia.
Great. Okay. Well, I think it's a really excellent short film. Have you written a script or not yet?
Yes, I already written.
Okay, but you haven't raised money for it. You haven't made it yet.
No.
No. Okay. So the story is about a young filmmaker who's graduated from an expensive film school who is working in Jakarta and wants to make a documentary about the victims of the flood who are living in the slums. And he focuses on an old guy called Gunawan, who lives in the slums. And to his surprise, he discovers that Gunawan actually doesn't care very much about the flooding because he's just used to it. He's lived in the slums all his life, and it's just the same as usual for him. So he's quite a happy guy. And the people at the television channel, the producers, insist that Andre, who is the filmmaker, make a film in which this old guy is crying and miserable about his conditions, because they think that the audiences want to see people suffering and crying. Is that a correct interpretation of your intentions, Excel?
Yeah, that's right.
Okay. The great thing about that is that it's a short film with a very clear idea of pressure on an individual to do something that they don't want. Because, of course, he doesn't want to make a film about an old man crying. He wants to make a film about this guy who just accepts that the flooding is part of his life and it's not going to change his attitude. And what's good about that is it has such a strong contemporary relevance. And obviously you picked it up from watching Indonesian TV coverage, but we're all very concerned about the way that the news is manipulated now, as I was referring yesterday. So in structural terms for a short film, you've got one young guy against an organization. And that's a very good basis for a short film, because it's very clear what he wants, and it's very clear the organization wants. The organization wants to see crying old men suffering in the flood. But for me, it's much more interesting to see the film that the young guy wants to make of an old guy who doesn't really care about the flooding because his whole life has been full of obstacles and difficulties. And what you might want to think about is, it depends how long the film, I mean, it could become a longer feature film, or you could do it short. Do you want Andre to succeed in making the film he wants to make about a happy guy just confronting disaster, or do you want him to fail and make the film that the TV channel wants?
I want Andre to fail.
Okay, so it's going to be sad. Okay, I mean, that's up to you. As a member of the audience, I would prefer to see Andre succeed and rebel against the TV channel and make the film that he wants to make. Maybe he has to leave the job and do it on his own. And then if he makes the film about a happy guy dealing with disaster, I would feel as an audience watching that, he's done what he needed to do. He's presented the truth rather than the fake story of a manipulated news channel. I mean, there's no right or wrong about it. You can have the downbeat ending of the guy fails and the TV channel wins and manipulates the news, or you can have the upbeat version. And I'm not saying that one is right or one is wrong, but what I like is the contemporary relevance of your film, that everybody all over the world would understand that the organization is controlling the content of the news, and it's not the truth. And ultimately in cinema, we want the truth. At the end of the film, you want the revelation of what really has happened. And so it's up to you how you do it. But what are your plans? Do you think you're going to be able to go forward with this? Have you got any ideas how you could set this project up?
I think right now I still focusing on the developing the script and with the Giovanni, and for the how to make it. Still I'm not thinking about it yet. I still developing the script.
Okay. Because one way it could end is that Andre makes the film about a happy guy living in a slum who's dealing with the flood and manages to keep happy despite it, and the audience response to that could still be that they are amazed at how difficult the conditions are for those people, and that they admire them for their spirit and for their heroic qualities in confronting disaster. Even though he's happy about it and not crying like the TV production company has said. But it's your call. In a short film, it's quite hard to have a dark, tragic story. You'll have much more success in getting it shown, at least, if you have a more uplifting story of success. Tragedy, by the way, is the least popular genre these days. I mean, back in Shakespeare's time, everything was tragedy. But nowadays, life is so tough and miserable that tragedy has become an unpopular genre, because we want to escape from the difficulties of life and find ways to be cheerful, and, like the character in your film, to be optimistic and to make life worthwhile. Anyway, I like it, and I really hope just have a think about what the best way of ending the film is, whether it should be triumph or failure.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thanks very much, Axel. Right, now do we have Kevin here?
There's two Kevins.
Yes, we do. Hi, Kevin. Necessity of life, yeah?
Oh, the other Kevin.
Yes.
Oh, there's lots of Kevins, right. Do you want to describe the film, or shall I?
The film is about a middle-aged taxi driver who find the money that belongs to his female passenger, and then he's in difficult situation between returning the money or use it for his daughter's medical expenses.
Okay, thank you. This is a good idea, because you have a taxi driver who, at the beginning of the film, seems to be very dark and frightening, and is worrying his woman passenger, who's a young woman, and kind of terrifying her. And the twist you have is that she is completely wrong about him. He's not a dangerous potential rapist, crazy guy. He's actually a very honorable person who has come back to her house after having delivered her in his taxi to return the money that she left in the car.
Yes.
That would have helped him enormously to heal to pay for medical expenses for his daughter. That's a very good twist that you've got. The suggestion I have for it, though, is that you need to show the whole film from the young woman's point of view. Because then it will be very powerful. It's more intriguing for us if we share her fear about this taxi driver is going to kill me or rape me or rob me or something. Because then you've got the tension. At the moment, we're seeing it from both points of view, and that dilutes the tension, because we know he's a good guy too quickly. And what makes it interesting as a film is if it seems to be a kind of horror film, to begin with. That there's a young woman who's been given a ride in a taxi from this man who just talks all the time, and then he delivers her home, and he stops outside her house and he doesn't leave. And she's looking at this guy, terrified that he's going to come in, and he does come, and she's really terrified now because he's carrying something. Is it a gun? Is it a knife or something? No, it's the money he left, that she has left in the car. And that's such a sweet reversal, we call it, to have. But the effect of the film is to crank up the fear from the beginning and do the whole film from her point of view. Do you understand what I'm saying? Or, I mean, do you think that's wrong? Would you prefer to do it from the taxi driver's point of view?
Yes, I understand. Eventually, I work on this to a different point of view, right? And then I want to try which one is better point of view. I already
Yes,
did.
okay. Because what you have at the moment is the taxi driver going to his daughter and sort of looking after her. I don't think you need that. I think you can. I mean, it can be dealt with on that he calls her or something at the end. But the film is more powerful if you have it from the young woman's point of view, and the relief she feels when he hands the money back. And yes, she gives him a nice tip. She gives him half the money back or whatever, in gratitude. That for me could work very well as a short film, where you make a character frightening, and you give her lots of fear, and then you twist it round, and he's not frightening. He might be a little bit odd. He might be a little bit strange. You could, if you wanted to, you could play the racist card, and make the woman, I don't know, an American rich white woman or something, and make him a person of color. I mean, it's another element that you could add into it. That is this a racist thing? That's up to you. It's your decision. But it's just another way of cranking up the tension in it, and then revealing that this guy is a lovely guy.
Yeah. Right.
So have you managed to go forward at all with this project, or is it just an idea at this stage?
Yes, I already written a script.
Okay, have you submitted it to anybody for some finance, or it's just with you at the moment?
It's just with me at the moment.
Good. Okay. Well, I hope you can find a producer.
Yeah, I think
or some.
I think Cinema Lima helps some students to achieve the film. So I think we will help them to give the sponsor to making the film.
Yeah, is that? Are you talking about private finance, or are you talking about the film school helping them?
Yeah, the Cinema Lima. Yeah, now Cinema.
Great. That's
Yeah.
So I mean that the first one, Tears, and this one, Necessity of Life. I think they really have a lot of potential.
Yes.
So Kevin, I wish you every luck in taking that project forward. And don't be afraid of trying out new things with the script. Sometimes you go down one road and it doesn't work, and so you have to try another route. But my advice is make it really frightening and give it that twist at the end.
But I'm sure that Kevin has a question about a logic of story, right, Kevin? Do you want to ask?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, I want to ask about the logic of the story versus logic in real life, because my friends keep give me feedback something that logical in real life, but I think it's not logical to the story. And what do you think, Christian?
Which part of the story is not logical?
I mean,
the
yeah,
detail levels. So.
I mean, does the story needs a logical? Because the story represents a real, I mean, inspired by real life, right? So is it
Yes.
necessary the logic of the real life put that in the story, because suddenly in the film we create some in our worlds itself. So how do you think
Well,
that?
okay. There are many ways to make a film, and they can be true to life, which is social realism, or you can invent a different kind of world. And there's no right or wrong either way. All that matters is, does the story work? And do we care about the characters? So you could set your story in space, underwater, you know, you can do anything you like, as long as we believe the world you create. Now, it appears to me to be a very naturalistic story. And what I read, unless I'm missing something, is completely logical and believable for me. That there is a girl in a taxi who is worried about the driver, and she gets more and more frightened, and she goes into her home, and the taxi stays outside, and she's getting hysterical, and the taxi driver comes in, but it's not to kill her, it's to give her the money. That sounds completely logical to me. And so in this particular case, I would make it as authentic as possible, except that in genre terms, it's kind of a horror film. It's kind of a horror film with a twist. So you could put in those little horror ingredients that I mentioned very briefly of what creates her fear, that you can make him, the driver, a little bit ambiguous. He's a little bit strange. Is he a little bit autistic, or is he a little bit, he talks in a weird way, or he looks weird, and that she's a bit, you know, maybe she's drunk too much coffee, or maybe she's had too many pills, or maybe she's a bit drunk, and so she's a bit sort of nervous herself. And you crank that up through the story, using sound, using looks, using expressions, where you use the tools of horror to make the audience worried that this woman is in trouble. And then you reverse it at the end because she's not. Which for a short film is perfect. I mean, if it was a feature, you could do loads and loads of other things, but this is a short film and is sort of comfortable in that shape. I mean, by and large, I would say don't worry too much about logic. Just, does this story work as a story that has a beginning, a middle, and an end? And by the way, as we've mentioned horror, I can't remember if I said this yesterday or not. One of the biggest problems in horror films is that in the third act climax, because in a narrative, you start by establishing the characters, then you create the problems and things get worse. And in the third act, you have the climax. So it's like the monster is revealed, the house is set on fire, the guy with the chainsaw starts chopping people's heads off or whatever. But what often happens in horror films that is a mistake is that they change the rules of the world that they have created, so that the monster, and in this case I'm talking about the taxi driver, is shown to do more damage or make more trouble than you were originally allowed to see at the beginning of the film. And they change it so that he can sort of breathe fire or sort of fly or sort of do incredible things. And I've seen horror films where they change the rules just for the sake of the spectacle. But I'm going, oh, that's ridiculous, because we didn't know that he could fly, or we didn't know that he could breathe fire. So what's the point of that happening? I don't believe it anymore. It's not true to the character. So you have to be true to the characters, but it just has to be logical within the story. It doesn't have to be logical to real life. Does that answer your question?
Yes. Yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
So go with it. Go with it. It's a good idea.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Kevin.
Thank
Right. The next one, I'm just picking these up at random.
Yeah, it's
What
okay.
I've got in front of me is hi, Alexander. Hi. I've got your project here called To Keep Nose Clean. Yes?
Hi. Yes, it's true.
Do you want to describe what your project is about?
Okay. It tells about a child that has to deal with his mother, who tries to cover her actions towards an unexpected incident. So it's like a family thriller. Yeah, like a family thriller, I guess. And with some mystery in that film.
Okay, you're being very polite about what is a very tough story. Because
Yes.
what happens in this film is that we're seeing it through the eyes of a 10-year-old child, Bandi,
Yeah.
and his mother murders his father by smashing his head repeatedly on the dining table.
Yes.
And not only does she murder the father, but she then chops him up into little pieces and serves the chopped up father as dinner for the little boy in the evening. Am I right?
Yes.
Yeah. Well, this is certainly a horror film. And there's no escape from that. We're in Hannibal Lecter territory of people eating each other. Okay, just one or two things, because we don't have the time to sort of talk about everything. But your log line, which is what you stated, was a child has to deal with his mother who tries to cover her actions towards an unexpected incident. You're being much too polite, and we don't know what that means, because it could be anything in the world. All we know is that it's a child and a mother. But in a log line, you don't want to say an unexpected incident. Tell us what happens, because the idea of a log line is to try and attract interest in your story so that people will support you and help give you the money and the means to get your film made. And so what your log line needs to say is a child has to deal with his mother after she murders his father, chops him up, and serves him for dinner. And it's like, oh my God, that's terrifying. So don't be shy about saying what it's really about. Don't be polite. Just go for it, because I mean, there's some people who love horror and there's some people who hate horror, but it's got a very strong commercial appeal to a very wide audience. And a little 10-year-old boy being served a steak of his cut up dad is a sort of terrifying concept, but it's a good one for cinema. And the reason we like horror in cinema is because we are safe, either in the cinema watching on screen with other people, I wish, but we're not able to do that at the moment, or at home on the sofa or in bed watching it on our screen. We know that this is not really happening, but we like the visceral emotions of being scared. The thing about your short film is you've got a very good setup, but I don't think you really found the ending yet, because it's what we have is that the child runs away, and it sort of feels incomplete. If it's a short film, we either want the child to become a victim, but that's very dark, of his mad mother, or more probably we want the child to get some kind of revenge on his mother. We want him to be able to call the police or trick his mother in some way into being caught. But we need completion that is more than just him running away, because you've got a very good setup. But even short films, you see, need structure. You've got a very good beginning, you've got a very good middle, but the end is sort of like, nah, well, that's not really a very interesting ending, that he runs away. So you have to find a bit more complexity in that. One point of reference for these kind of stories where you have an innocent struggling against, let's call her an antagonist. You know what does everybody know what I mean when I talk about protagonist and antagonist? Your protagonist is your main character. Your antagonist is the bad guy or the bad woman or the bad monster. And one of the biggest problems I see in screenwriting today is people spend too much time presenting what a wonderful protagonist they've got, what a lovely heroic main character, a super strong guy, a very sexy woman who can do anything she wants. But they don't give enough time to the antagonist. You have to make sure that your antagonist is as strong or equal to the protagonist to create the tension and test the protagonist. And this is not just superhero films I'm talking about. This could be in a little drama about a boy and a girl fighting over an orange. I mean, it doesn't have to be dark. But you still need somebody to be the protagonist and somebody to be the antagonist. Otherwise, there's no tension. Now, you've got a very powerful antagonist here who is the mother. And we have a little child who is the protagonist. But we need some closure on that story. And as a reference, think about fairy tales. If you think, I mean, I'm sure you have the same fairy tales that we've all had in Europe, and I'm sure you've got some wonderful ones of your own in Indonesian mythology and culture. But do you know about, as a child, did you hear about the Goldilocks and the Three Bears and Red Riding Hood? These are little stories about innocent people facing problems with the big bad wolf or the big bears and stuff. And fairy tales are a good reference point for a story like this of an innocent against an evil person, because what they usually have is the innocent young girl or young person triumphing and tricking the big bad wolf or the evil grandmother or whatever it is. So in a way, you have the basis of a sort of horror fairy tale in your story, and you might want to check out some of those fairy tales. I don't know if there's Indonesian stories that relate to that would connect very well culturally with you, and see if that would be useful for finding what is essentially the third act of your story. Yeah? Do you have any questions about that, Alexander?
Actually, for the ending, I thought that it will help to make the film to be not very dark. I mean, it gives like like a hope for the child. So that's why I think that yeah, I think that the child just go away or something. But I feel kind of odd to make the child to just go away, leaving leaving his mother.
Yes, I understand what you're saying. The child is free, but we don't have the proper feeling of catharsis that I quoted Aristotle on, because the mum has got away with it. She's at home. She's murdered dad. She's still free, and so we don't have a sense of justice, because the child has got away, but it's not enough. We want to see some kind of closure for the mum as well. So I'm thinking if there's a simple way for the boy to trap the mum, to somehow secretly call the police, lock her in a room, well, kill her would be another thing, but that's a bit dark. Just find some way of getting some kind of punishment for the mother, that we feel, yes, that's what she deserves.
Okay.
So have a think about that, and see if you can add to the script and make that work better. Yeah.
Okay.
All right.
Sorry, Kristen. Can
Yes.
I have one more question?
Of course.
At the very first scene, in my hypnosis, I actually have two pictures in my head. The first one is I want to show the visuals how Bandi's mother killed his dad, kill her husband. But the second thing is I don't want to show the murder, because I think it will keep the mystery from the film. So what do you think it will be perfectly fit from the for the film? Is should I put the visual like the way the mother killed the father, or just keep it from the Bandi's eye, and then the audience doesn't know anything?
It's a good question, and nothing is ever as frightening for an audience as what we are imagining in our head. As soon as we see it, it's less interesting than the scenes that we were imagining. So you would probably have more success if you just have it from the child's point of view, but we don't actually see the murder taking place. What we think we're seeing it, but we don't actually see it. We might hear it, but we might just be looking at the boy's eyes and hearing horrible squelching sounds of a head being thumped against a table and seeing a bit of blood or something. So there are some filmmakers who love to show full on the violence and the sort of difficult scenes. I find that less interesting than filmmakers who actually make you think you're watching it, but you're not actually watching it. There's an Austrian filmmaker called Michael Haneke. He made a film called Funny Games and a bunch of other films. They're absolutely terrifying, because you think you're watching absolutely terrifying violence, but actually you don't see anything. It's just all implied in your head that you're seeing something, but it's all off screen. So if you can focus entirely on the little boy's point of view, it will probably be more powerful.
Okay.
I don't know if you're all too young probably to remember Steven Spielberg's Jaws from 1976, but maybe one or two of you have seen it. It was one of the first blockbusters. When they first edited Jaws, the financiers and the filmmakers were really depressed because it was just rubbish. And the reason it was rubbish is because of the shark, which was this stupid mechanical shark that looked like a little sort of plastic thing that you'd put in the bath with your baby. It was a rubbish special effect, because this is 1976, before they had these sophisticated computerized methods of creating special effects. And then they cut the film completely differently, so that you don't see the shark until very late in the film. But you think you can see the shark, because you see the water and you see the fin going dum 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 through the water, and then beautiful women being dragged underwater and bitten, but you're not actually seeing anything. And the moment when you do see the shark in Jaws is really disappointing, because it's still a really rubbish shark, and it just looks like a bad mechanical thing. But this is back in the mid-70s, when things were a little different. So hiding the monster was what was effective in that film and most horror films. And in your film, it would most likely be a much better film if we just concentrate on the boy, but don't see the bad stuff. Yeah? Does that work for you?
Yeah, very well. Thank you, Christian.
Good. Okay, good luck with that. Good luck with that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Let me go to the next one now. What have we got here? I have a project by Dua Sendok Makan. Are they here? I don't.
The guy is not here.
Okay, we move on to the next one.
We'll skip.
Yeah, Alvin, you're here, aren't you?
Yes, yes.
Hi, Alvin.
Hi, Christian.
It's called Psyche, your film, is it?
Yes.
Would you like to describe what happens?
It's about an apartment mate feels her work is interrupted after a grandmother caring for her autistic child dies. So she has to bring his child together because nobody wants to take care of her child while she's working.
Okay. Your log line that you've read out is an apartment maid feels her work is interrupted after a grandmother caring for her autistic child dies. Now, I think you've got the wrong focus in the log line in terms of explaining to people what your film is about. Because the grandmother having died, the grandmother used to look after the child, but now the grandmother has died and the maid is unable to leave the child at home with the grandmother because she's not there, and has to take the child to work with her as a cleaning lady. So the grandmother's death is not in the film, is it? That's what happened before the film started, or do you want to show the grandmother's death in the film?
So I think I want to show the grandmother death, but with the conversation with the uncle of the child.
Okay, because for me, the essence of your story is a hard-working woman at work who is the mother of an autistic child, has to take her child to work because there's nobody else to look after, and the child knocks over a valuable vase in the building she's working in. And the mother is very upset and angry about this. and runs down from the 14th floor outside to try and run away from the problem he's caused. I mean, that's the essence. The essence of your film is a woman at work trying to struggle with being a mother and a working mother, and the child complicates it by knocking over a valuable vase.
Yes.
So just for the log line, I would suggest that it would be more exciting for people who might want to invest in your film to saying a cleaning woman has to take her autistic child to work, but on the job, the child knocks over an invaluable vase and the mother has to deal with the consequences, or something like that. Because that's a drama. And we are sympathetic to the mother, we're sympathetic to the child. In a way, the antagonist is the job. It's the situation she's working in. What is this place? Is it a hotel that she's working in?
An apartment.
I'm sorry?
Penthouse.
Okay, but it needs to be very luxurious. It needs to be really valuable jars that the child breaks, not just any old vase, but like a work of art.
Okay.
And so we immediately see the struggle this woman has between trying to earn money and looking after the child. The end of your film is that she takes the child home and the child falls asleep. And she kind of forgives him and is still being a good mother and a loving mother for a loving child. Okay, but there's a similarity with the previous story in that we haven't dealt with the consequences of the broken vase.
Yes.
And so I'm happy that the mother has kind of forgiven the child, because the child has special needs. The child has autism and presumably has some sort of physical limitation. So knocking over a vase is just normal for this child who doesn't have the same control over their body as a normal, in inverted commas, person. So our sympathies are with them completely. But wouldn't it be more interesting if in the penthouse, the owner of, or the wife or whoever it is that lives there has secretly seen what has happened, either through just a door being slightly ajar, or maybe there are video cameras in the penthouse, and confronts the mother with what has happened. And the mother says, "I'm so sorry, I knocked over the vase. I did it. You can take it out of my wages, whatever the value is. I'm so sorry. Please don't sack me." Raise the stakes. Make it important that she thinks she's going to lose the job. And you could then have the owner of the penthouse saying, "It's fine, no problem, these things happen." She could be given forgiveness at the end, because we know as the audience that the owner of the penthouse saw what's happened and sees that the mother is covering up for her child and taking the blame for herself, rather than blaming her child and just saying, "I've got an autistic child who smashes things." but that the woman says, I did it myself. And the owner knows that it wasn't her, but says, no problem. And so you have like an uplifting ending after the, I mean, it could be outside the penthouse after she's come down the stairs that she meets her or something. But it's a story that you need to confront the main incident that has happened in the story, which is the breaking of the vase. Do you agree with that?
Yes, 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 Christian.
Okay, so have you written the script already, or are you in the process of writing it?
I'm in the process to writing the script right now.
Okay, have a think about whether you can have a way of dealing with the main incident of the smashed vase in the film, because we've got the mother and the child just being okay, but we've left the smashed vase in the place, and I would like to see that dealt with in a simple, effective way. I mean, if you want, you can have her sacked and make it dark, but I wouldn't suggest that, because as I was saying before, life is so difficult. We want uplifting stories in our lives that give us hope and give us a reason to live and to make life more tolerable when it's so difficult. So I'd have a think about that in your rewrites on the project. Yeah?
Okay. Okay, thank you,
All
Christian.
right. Do you have any other questions, or do you think you've got an idea of how to go forward?
No, thank you, Christian.
Okay. Good luck, Alvin.
Thank you.
Okay, do we have Braveri here? Yes, we do. Hi, Braveri. 101, yeah?
Hi, sir. Yes.
Would you like to describe what the story is?
Okay. My story is about a young sculptor artist have to attend an office job interview as his mother's final request, but suddenly he get an opportunity to join a national art exhibition, which is his dreams.
What happens at the end of the film?
In my story, I have an open ending. Because in my statement, in my story, let the audience that decide the ending, because it is talk about a dream and kewajiban. The dream and their kewajiban apa ya, Kak?
Duty.
Oh yeah, a duty, a dream versus a duty, and I won't let the audience to decide which one better is for them. So I choose an open ending.
Okay. Personally, I have problems with open endings. I like to be told what's going to happen in the story, or at least I want to think that I know what's going to happen. The person sitting next to me might have a different view of what's going to happen. But if there's too much ambiguity, I feel like you haven't delivered what you seem to be delivering at the beginning of the story. But it's a personal choice. And I don't expect everybody to agree with that. But particularly in a short film, you're risking alienating your audience if you don't complete the story. I think in a feature, it's more understandable to have ambiguity at the end because we've been through 90 minutes with them. In a short film, I sort of have the feeling, well, I don't know what happened here. I don't know if he was going to take the boring office job or whether he was going to get the National Gallery job. This is personal, though. This is I'm quite sort of respectful if you disagree with that. But I have a suggestion as to how I think this project could be attractive, and that is whether you would think about making this a comedy because it has comic potential. And what that potential is that this guy is just getting ready for an interview that his mother, who is sick, she's not dead yet, is she? She's sick.
Yes, correct.
Yeah. His sickly mother has urged him to go for this interview, presumably because she wants him to get a steady job. And just before the interview, he gets the message that the National Gallery wants to see him about his art because he's an artist, yeah?
Yeah, yeah.
All right. And that to him is much more important than getting a rather dull office job. But the comic potential in it, for me, when I read your story, is that if he gets that message just before he goes into the interview, that the gallery wants to see him, he then does the interview, but not in the way we would expect an interview to take place. He tries to do the interview badly because he doesn't actually want the job. He's been distracted by something else. And what you can have is a bunch of intimidating people asking him questions. And because he doesn't care anymore, the answers he gives are completely unexpected. And he's kind of trying to get out of the job. But the reaction is the opposite. They like him for being different. They like him for being challenging and for not giving the obvious answers that they have had from the other people who are being interviewed. And so they think this is somebody who thinks for themselves. He's prepared to be challenging and controversial, and that has comic potential. It's a way of doing the interview where we'll be laughing because we know that he wants to have the art job and doesn't care about this job, but he's just doing it for his mum. And the people interviewing him are kind of astonished because they are surprised at his response. And then the twist at the end is that when he's outside after the interview, calling his mum or something to tell her he's done the interview, that one of the people comes out and offers him the job, to his astonishment, that he has tried not to have. So it's a suggestion about how you could move it into a comic direction. And we love to laugh. We love to laugh. And this kind of comedy is based on the misunderstanding. It's misunderstanding that the people interviewing him think that he really wants the job, but we know as the audience that he actually doesn't want the job, but he has to go through the motions of the meeting just to be a good son to his mother. And you could leave it that he's offered the job at the end, but we still don't know which way he's going to go. But at least we'd have closure for the story that we've been watching of a man going for an interview for a job he doesn't want. Do you have any questions about that? Do you think it could work that way?
Yes, I guess, but actually I've already written the script and I don't put any comical ideas because
no, I know there was no comedy in the story that you presented to me. I'm just telling you my reaction to it is that there is the potential here to make this comic. And we all crave laughter and comedy these days because life is so tough. So you've written a script, but as I said yesterday, screenwriting is about rewriting.
Yes.
And my personal view is that you would have a better chance of getting this made if you put some comedy in that interview.
Okay. Okay.
It's just a point of view. I mean, listen, nothing I'm saying is some kind of objective truth. It's a subjective view based on my experience of working with scripts. But I'm not saying it has to be like that. I'm just giving you a response, a personal response to the material you sent me of how the best way that I would like to see that film. And then you have to decide whether it works for you, and you have to be true to your own desires about how you would like this story to go. Okay?
Okay. Thank you so much, sir.
Thanks, Braveri. Good luck. Why is it called 101?
It is his number at a queue. At queue is line number.
Okay. Yeah, kind of intriguing. What have I got here?
The number.
I have I Pretend from Euro. Is Euro there? Yes. Hi, Euro.
Hi, Christian.
Would you like to describe your story?
Okay. Okay, my story is about a young woman, age of like 20s, is doing social climbing using debt, but in fact, she's not that rich.
Yeah. The way the synopsis is written, I got a little bit muddled in some of the paragraphs, but we don't have time to go into that. You've got two women who are having their weekly dinner, Sandra and Dina.
Yes.
Which one of them? Do you use this word influencer in Indonesia? Do you understand what an influencer is?
I think yes.
Okay, it's somebody
like
who
official
uses social media to promote restaurants, cafes, holidays, and they get followers who then use the product that we call them influencers. And this woman is an influencer, yeah, because she goes
yes,
to
she is.
expensive restaurants and to take selfies of herself that she then puts online to promote the product and so that she can get money. Is that right?
I think it's not. It's just a woman called Sandra who is not really rich, but a friend of Dina and want to be like Dina. Dina is a woman who is like you said influencer or something like that, something famous person, something like that, but on like Instagram.
Yes, that's what I meant. So Dina is the influencer, and Sandra wants to
Yes,
be
she
like
is.
her, but
Yes, she is.
in the real world, we know that most of the people who show happy photos of themselves on Instagram are leading a fake life. They are presenting an
Yes.
artificial view of what their world really is. Do you agree?
Yes, that story is about. Yes.
Okay.
Agree.
So for me, the potential of that story, and maybe it's there, but I got a bit, as I say, I got a bit muddled in trying to understand it, is that Dina seems to be this woman in control who gives an online image on Instagram and Twitter and I don't know what else of a successful, happy woman who is enjoying the good things in life, the good restaurants, the good cafes, the good friends and nice clothes and things. But in real life, she's not like that. In real life, when she's not taking photos or not being at these places, she's an empty, miserable person who doesn't know what her life is really about. For me, the interest is if initially Sandra is envious of Dina because she thinks that Dina has a better life than she does. What the film's power would be that Sandra realizes that even though she doesn't have the smart clothes and the smart restaurants and the followers on social media, she is actually a more complete and happier person with her own modest life, because it's a real life, rather than Dina's life, which is basically an artificial online life. So if I refer to what I was saying at the beginning about want and need, at the beginning, Sandra wants to be like her successful friend, Dina. She needs to understand, though, that Dina's life is fake and that her own life is perfectly acceptable without that artificial gloss. Is that your intention of what you want the film to be?
I think pointing to that, yes.
Okay, I mean, I don't want to put words in your mouth. If you want it to be something different, that's fine. But that's how I interpret it. That at the beginning of the film, the character who appears to be the successful, popular, beautiful, amazing person has an empty life because the life is just really artificial. And the ordinary, more modest person actually has a more fulfilled life because she's true to herself and she's not being fake. And she has to learn that. The lesson she learns in your story is that my life's okay. I don't need to represent myself as something I am not online. That for me would be what the message of that film would be. But there's other ways of doing it, but that's my interpretation of what I was understanding. And you can make it very powerful at the beginning with a you want to make, they're friends, but you want to make them as different as possible, so that one of them is very, very confident and extrovert. No, I've been seeing this guy and I've been eating at this place and I've been invited on a holiday there. And the other one saying, oh, well, I've just been at home watching television, actually. So that you sort of see a contrast between them. But then at the end, we realize that the quiet one is a happier person than the one pretending to be in control. Yeah?
Yes, I see.
Okay, well, see where that goes, and I hope that works out for you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Euro.
Christian, do you want to take a break of 5 minutes or?
No, I think because I think we shouldn't go too much. I mean, I think we should. I'll give it like we can go over 5 or 10 minutes, but I think I'd like to go straight through it, and we'll just do another 10 minutes, and then that'll be it.
Okay.
Okay, because I've got to do something else after this.
Okay.
I've just got 2 more projects that I've read, and then the log lines. And Amanda, is Amanda there? Hi, Amanda.
Hi, Christian.
Tell us what Blue Lemonade is about.
It's about a girl living with her mother who is depressed. She needs to pass the exam at school, but her only best friend at school got got into fight with her, and she ended up failed the exam and losing her friend.
Right. So this is a girl who has a depressed mother, and the daughter thinks she has friends at college, but what we discover is that these girls are not really her friends, and that the only person she can rely on is her mother, who, even though she's depressed and struggling with life, is the one that she can connect with properly. That's a perfectly fine story for a short film. And you know what I love best about your film? I love the title, Blue Lemonade. Does that exist? Is that an Indonesian thing, Blue Lemonade?
It's actually what the character made for the exam.
Yeah, I know. But I want some. I want some blue lemonade. I mean, does it exist? Have you made blue lemonade?
Yes, it's a blueberry mixed with lemonade, so the lemonade color is blue.
Blueberries. Okay. Yeah. Some titles just have a sound that are great. Blue Lemonade is a fantastic title. So don't change the title. Change anything you want, but don't change the title.
Okay.
I think it's a sweet little story, and I wouldn't want to change too much about it. The only thing I'd say in presenting the information is in the first paragraph, you're telling us about a mother and a daughter, but you don't tell us what the age of the girl is. How old is she?
20, because she's in university.
Okay, I didn't because you referred to school. I just didn't know. I didn't know. I'd make her as young as possible, whatever the youngest age you can be at university is. And then, if I just read out the first few lines, Marnie's a hospitality student living with her mother in a small studio house. Her mother is battling with depression because her father left the family for another woman, leaving Marnie and her mother with nothing, making them struggling financially. That's fine, but it's what we call backstory. It's what has happened before the film starts, I assume. Yeah? So you have to find a way of presenting all that information very quickly and visually. You want to present it visually, because what we hate in a film is direct character exposition, where the mother says, oh, I'm so depressed because my husband has left me for another woman and I'm struggling financially. It's just not real. People don't talk like that. And so you have to find a way of cinematically presenting the backstory in a simple way, just in a simple way, without using direct exposition. What you have to do is use what we call subtext. Subtext is where we see this woman, I don't know, taking some pills, taking some medicine. We see her crying, and we see the daughter sort of trying to help her, saying, it's okay, mum. And we understand that the subtext is that dad's left, maybe there's an old photo on the mantelpiece or something of him, and we understand why she's miserable without having to say it. That's what you need in a short film. You need lots of subtext when you've got that backstory. So yeah, I'd work on that, and I'd make sure that the other girls in the cooking exam are pretty nasty. Don't be afraid of making them, well, they're the antagonists. And I mean, young women can be very cruel to each other. And there's a lot of good movies that show that. where they're pretending to be nice, but actually are being really cruel. And the more cruel you can make them in that cooking exam, the stronger the film will be.
Okay.
So that when she comes home and she hugs her mum, we sort of feel they're going to make it somehow. They're going to get through this because they have each other.
Okay.
So the story works on that level. Get the backstory into the first part of the film simply, and crank up the nastiness of the friends,
Okay.
so that she's a victim of their cruelty.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you very much, Amanda.
Thank you so much, Christian.
Pleasure. All right. Is Kevin William with us? Yes. Hi, Kevin.
Hi, Christian.
I don't have a title for your film. What's it called?
It's called The Light, but the title is still not fixed yet.
Okay. Do you want to tell us what it's about?
Okay. The story is about a young man who lives with the mysterious child boy in his house. And one day, suddenly, a mysterious, very bright light flashes his house through the window. And the young man is want to check outside, go outside to check what is it, what is the light, but the young boy is prevent him to do it.
Okay, thank you. Now I have to tell you, I read your log line and I thought, okay, I get this. And then I read your synopsis and I got confused. That you have a very very good log line and a rather confusing synopsis. So I don't quite get. So let me read out the log line. A young man who never leaves the house lives with a mysterious little boy. One day, a very bright light flashed through the window of his house. The young man wants to go outside to check it, but the little boy prevents him from doing it. I mean, I understand that, but I don't understand what your film is saying. Okay. What is the bright light? So the questions I have is, what is the bright light? Are these two boys real? Is there a young man and a boy who are both real people? Are they both living in this house? And what is the film saying? Because I don't quite get it.
Okay. Basically, this film is about reborn or stepping out from your comfort zone. It's about taking a step out from your past. And this movie is a little bit of experimental and art house.
Sure.
Yeah, it's a little bit different. And the light is like destiny or hope, or the time you have to born, you have to go outside. And the little boy is represent the past, the shit you've done in the past.
I see. So is the young man and the boy the same person at different ages?
Yes, it's the same person.
Got it.
Yeah.
Got it. That's great. And the way you described it now was fantastic.
Thank you.
It was a really good description. And if you're setting up the film, what you're trying to get people interested in financing your film, you want to write down what you just said. Okay. It's about a guy leaving his comfort zone because he has fear of leaving the house. Is that right?
Yes, yes.
Okay. I mean, I kind of got that. And I love the idea of the light representing hope. And that's a really good description, which makes me understand what you're trying to do in a way that I didn't get just from the words on the page. Okay. But when you're trying to get the finance for the film, don't hide anything, because I mean, when the film is being shown in the cinema, you can hide stuff. But once you're trying to get the money and the interest in the film, you have to explain as clearly as possible what the film is about. And so I love this. If you start by saying a young man is terrified of leaving his own house, he has fear of going outside, and in the house is also a younger version of himself, and they're somehow in conflict with each other, and the young boy is stopping him from going outside. I just say it directly as it is, what your intentions of the film are, and then I would understand it really well. And the fact that it's a little bit experimental and the light is a light, and that's great, that's fine. It works very well in a short film. But you've got the dynamic between the young man and the boy, and it's like, if we're not quite sure who they are, but if at the end of the film we go, oh my God, it's the same guy as a young boy, and we learn that, we understand that, that's a very powerful way of ending the film. So I get it, and now I like it, now that I've understood it. So I wish you every luck, Kevin, in getting that going.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Actually, I have some question, if you mind.
Sure.
First of all, I just knew from you, if we want to pitch the story, we have to talk about what is about this movie. I think yesterday, while writing this synopsis, I think I don't have to tell what is movie about, and the guy I'm pitching will know what my film is about. And
well, the most important thing in pitching is to be clear and concise in what you are saying.
Okay.
And it's not about being lyrical and poetic, and it's not even about a performance. It's about being clear. This is what I want to do in my film.
Okay.
And this is what it's about. When you're pitching a film, you actually need more than the log line and synopsis. You need to have something about the theme, or something about what it is that you're trying to say with your film. But that would usually be something you'd say. This is my log line, this is my synopsis. I'm trying to make a film about a guy who is frightened of the world and has to somehow confront his fear and get out there, or whatever it is. I mean, I'm just sort of inventing.
Okay.
So you do need to say that when you're pitching. You need to talk about theme and what it is you're trying to say. Is that okay?
And okay, and if you don't mind, I have some question about symbol in my film.
Yes.
So this film is a quite personal film for me. And then I put some symbols in that film, like a card or milk. But my friends gave me the feedback. This symbol is personal. It's not universal, and they don't get it. How to I show them how to make it the symbol work in my film?
Oh, that's a tough one. Well, I think because your film is not a straightforward narrative film about the real world, it's a more symbolic film, and you're creating a particular world for your film. I would suggest that you just follow your instinct and do whatever you feel is right for your film, and it's very difficult to pick it up on the script. It's when it's symbolic, it's much easier to visualize what
Alright.
things mean than to read it in a script. But it's a short film, and I would just go for it and do it your way and follow your instinct and make it lyrical, make it magical, make it symbolic. And then the audience will decide if it works or it doesn't work. I mean, we don't know. But if that's your vision, I'd keep your vision intact and make it as personal as possible, but try and think what somebody sitting in a cinema is going to make of it. You know, don't be so obscure that you're the only person who will understand your film. Try and put all, as the screenwriter and the filmmaker, you need to think about the audience. You need to think, how will this be received? And it can be as personal as you like, but you do need, I mean, if you've seen films by like Tarkovsky, the great Russian filmmaker, I mean, his films are intensely personal, with images of his mother and his family and stuff, but they have a universality to them because he was a brilliant guy. So you just have to be good. You have to be a poet of the cinema to be able to present those ideas. But don't hold back, don't compromise, go for it, but think about the viewer when you're trying to present it.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. Good.
Thank you so
good
much,
luck,
Christian. Yeah.
It's a pleasure. Good luck. I think we the log lines. I haven't really got time to talk about all of them. I just tell you a couple of things about log lines. Always use the present tense. Some of these are in the past tense. The present tense is dynamic. So I've got, when a maverick boy refused to serve and comply, blah, blah. No, when a maverick boy refuses, make it present. It's active and dynamic to use the present tense. Be as clear as possible. Use adjectives to help describe things. Adjectives are your friend. And there are some really good stories here. There are some lovely ideas for short films. So I really very much hope to hear that some of you get these movies made and supported, because there's some excellent work. And I think we should wrap it up there. Yeah. But it's been fascinating for me to talk to you about your projects.
Thank
and
you so much,
get a little insight into Indonesian culture and cinema. Yeah. So I wish everybody the very best with your career, and I hope that we might have the chance to chat again in the future on some other occasion. So thank you, Giovanni, for arranging this.
Thank you so much, Christian. So we will meet again for sure.
We'll meet again. Okay, have a good evening, everybody, and bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Christian.
Pleasure to meet you.
Thank you, sir.
Bye.
Thank you so much.
Pleasure.
Pleasure.